This is how you know it's cold, when your soup looks like this. The entire United States is currently getting hit by an Arctic blast. Super frigid temperatures from West Coast all the way to the East Coast. And in a lot of places, it's setting records. It has been exceptionally cold here in Colorado for the past 2 days, and we are about to experience the worst of it tomorrow morning. So what better time than now to come out here and camp up in the mountains? What's up, everyone? Back with another episode, and yeah, I'm camping in this like polar vortex that we're getting. It's honestly not too terrible right now because, well, first of all, I'm not super high in elevation. I just came up this trail here and parked right along the side of it with the Kimbo. I think I'm at about 8,000 feet in elevation, and there's a reason why I did that. I'll explain in a little bit. And two, I picked this location because we have the sun beating down. I found a spot up a little bit higher, and it was really shady and cold. It is currently 9 degrees Fahrenheit with a 9-degree real feel, and to be honest, right now, it doesn't feel too bad. I'm only out here in a hoodie and a beanie, but the worst will be coming as soon as that sun sets, and of course tomorrow morning too. The real reason for me coming out here is to give you guys an update on the Kimbo and really show you guys how this thing performs in some record low temperatures. As you can tell, there is ice encrusted all around the outside of this thing. This is the propane door right here, which luckily I have on, so I did not have to open this to get things moving. This thing has just been sitting outside freezing for the past like week or two. Gosh. I experienced some pretty fun stuff this morning. Because the Kimbo was so cold, I came out here and there were some like problems, if you want to call them problems. I'm used to letting this camper freeze in the wintertime because I really only warm it up when I'm out using it, and typically it's not a big issue. One thing that you will find is the water freezes. This is completely frozen. It was actually a little bit too full too, so hopefully that thing did not crack or will not crack, but hopefully that'll thaw out. It's not a huge deal because I don't really need water for just an overnight trip. When the camper freezes, the battery freezes too. You can see we're getting like a blinking error right here. So it has not been charging today, but eventually once the battery warms up, it will be able to take a charge. Luckily, it can still output a charge while it's in this like frozen state. And that is something that I'm aware of. It wasn't going to be a big issue for me. As long as that battery can output power, I can have the lights on, and of course I can run the fan for my propane heater. I'm mainly going to be talking about propane heat in this video and how this thing is efficient with keeping the camper warm. This is going to be a pretty extreme test. I don't know how low the temperature has been when I've been out in the Kimbo. It's definitely been in the negatives before, but not quite as low as we are going to see tomorrow morning. I have all of my food sitting over here because I have a can of green beans right here, which froze and exploded and began kind of leaking all over the place here. So I'll get that cleaned up once it warms up in here and stuff isn't frozen. So I'm just gonna have some soup for dinner tonight, and hopefully, yeah, it's starting to become liquid again, which is good. It is currently 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I've been warming up the Kimbo for the past like maybe hour and a half, 2 hours on my way down here. We have 37% humidity in here, and it is currently 57.9 degrees Fahrenheit, and that will hopefully keep rising as I keep warming this thing up. Now let's talk about propane heat, whether it's in a camper like this, in a van, in even like a little log cabin or anything like that. What are my thoughts on it? Is it efficient? Will it keep you warm? What are some things to know? Now the heater option that is available when ordering a Kimbo, this is a Newport heater by Dickinson. It is a little propane heater. It is all self-contained, and I've done a whole video specifically about this propane heater in the past. That video is still getting a ton of views because it is wintertime now and there are a lot of questions, so I figured I would kind of reiterate my thoughts and really put it to the test here tonight. In my initial video of this propane heater, I was kind of going through like the growing pains of figuring out the best way to use it, how to work it, how to keep the temperature inside of this specific space regulated to a way that I don't need to turn the heat up, turn the heat down. You don't get too cold, you don't get too hot. And I of course have figured all of that stuff out now, so I'm gonna show you guys how I actually use this thing. Now, one of the things that I mentioned in that initial video was that sometimes it's a little bit hard to ignite, especially when I came out to the camper this morning and it was like 15 degrees in here. This lighter did not work. It's still a little bit cold, but now that it's getting a little bit warmer, this does light, so it would light the propane stove. I actually lit this thing with a good old-fashioned match. It works every single time, doesn't matter how cold it is. These stay inside so they're dry, and I fired that thing up pretty quickly. So there are a few different ways to light this, but you have to understand how something like this works. So this little wall behind me here, this little box is where the propane is stored. You guys could see that access panel from the outside, and it holds a lot of propane. You could put a regular like barbecue tank in there, but this one happened to come with one that is even a little bit taller. Last year in the winter time when we took the Kimbo all the way across to the East Coast, I actually tested the efficiency of this thing, so we'll talk about that too. So the propane feeds up into the actual little fireplace itself, and the reason why it's sometimes a little bit difficult to get going is because they are using a thermocoupler in here. You have the gas knob on the right and the fan speed over on the left with the fan switch just below that. So in order to open up those lines and get gas inside of here, you have to hold in the gas button and get that thing lit. The door comes open with a simple screw right up here on the left. And before, I was holding the gas for a long time with the door open, and I couldn't really figure out the magic touch to get it to work. So the best way to actually light this thing is to open the door, get the flame lit, and immediately close the door while holding the gas. You can hold it for like sometimes 5 to 10 seconds. It depends how cold it is here in the camper. But then once the heat starts building up in there, that thermocoupler will actually open and allow the gas to go through like normal. I currently have this thing set on high because I am trying to raise the temperature in here, but once it gets warm in here, I will probably back it down to low. Fan speed is pretty simple, just on and off. I would highly recommend leaving a fan on when you're running something like this, because if not, the heat just kind of sits in this little unit here, and eventually you're probably going to run into issues. So definitely have the fan on whenever you're running something like this. So right now I'm currently in the warming up stages. Once the camper gets to probably like maybe mid 60s, 65 degrees, maybe even 70 degrees, then I will turn this heat down in a little bit and I will kind of explain like the threshold for the sweet zone there. That sweet zone that I'm talking about is how I actually ran this fireplace for consecutive days straight. So before I actually give you the answer, guess how long I could keep the Kimbo heated with a 30-pound propane tank in here. Before we get too far in this video, I do have to go back and reference last video where I said I was going to give back to you guys and we were doing a giveaway. The winner has been selected right here. Shout out to Mink. Mink has been a subscriber on the channel for over 6 years now, which is almost how long I've been creating videos here on this channel. So he's been there since almost the beginning. Mink, thank you so much for your continued support. I appreciate it. And we are going to continue this giveaway in this video too. All you have to do is be subscribed, like the video, and drop a comment down below. I'm going to pick a comment by next video and announce the winner there. If you do get picked as the winner, like Mink, I actually replied to your comment over on that old video, and I need your email address. I'm gonna get your information from you, and I'm gonna send you a swag pack from the Psy Productions store. Got a lot of stuff going over there, and I'm shipping out orders pretty regularly now, so if you guys don't think you're too lucky and you want to just order something like a hoodie, hat, shorts, water bottle, whatever it may be, the store is currently open, and everything that you guys purchase over there helps me continue to make videos here on the channel, so I appreciate the support. I'm going to check back in once the camper is warmed up. We're already at 59.5 degrees, so shouldn't be much longer. All right, the time is now 4:30 in the afternoon and the sun has set behind the mountains over here, and it warmed up in here. It's currently 67.1 degrees, 35% humidity, and it feels nice just hanging out here in the camper. I'm updating you guys now because this is where it is going to take a turn for the worse. It is about to drop below zero and then continue dropping after this. So let's get this stove all dialed in. Now, I mentioned in the past that sometimes it gets too hot in here at night if you have this on any of the settings. Right now, you can tell this is currently locked into the high setting. Fan speed, I had that cranking like this, but I turned it down just so it's not loud in here. So I'll put that down there about halfway. I can probably get away with just keeping it on this low click, right like that for the night. But for the most part, if it's not frigid outside, if you press the gas knob in and turn it just a little bit towards the off side, it's now no longer locked into place. So I will typically turn this down and just keep an eye on the flame, going really slow, a little bit more. There you can see the flame start to die down a little bit. So right about there, with just a tiny little orange flicker and the rest of it blue there, that is typically where I would keep this when it's not absolutely freezing outside. This setting is what I was referring to calling it the sweet zone, because as long as it's not sub-zero outside, it will typically keep the camper at around like the mid 60s, 65. If it's really not cold outside at all, it'll bump it up to probably like 70 in here, but setting the fireplace below the low setting like that is the best way to kind of dial in the heat. I don't have to open up any windows to keep it cooler in here. I can just set it, forget it, sleep, and I'm good with it. Now, a couple things to keep in mind as well. I parked here in this specific little camp spot because the sun was baking on the side of the camper, hopefully keeping it a little bit warmer. But now that the sun is gone, I put my window shades down up here because, of course, that will help better insulate it. These are double pane windows, so you don't feel a lot of cold coming from there, but unless you have a view to look out at, which I've got a little bit of one, but for now I'm gonna keep this closed and keep the heat inside and hopefully keep the cold outside. Now I'm actually going to turn this to low because it is going to get so cold. I'm gonna crank the fan back up to high for now too and just see how the camper does. And I will check back in around dinner time, maybe like another 2 hours or so, and let you guys know how it's going in here. It is now 6:30 at night, and we are at 1 degree Fahrenheit outside. Real feel of 3 though, so it's pretty balmy. I'm gonna work on making some soup right now as it is 60.4 degrees in here. And it is 37% humidity. Typically, I don't like cooking inside of the Kimbo, especially something like soup. I'm just gonna kind of like boil it in the can. That's of course going to make it a little more moist than it is in here right now. I'm gonna try to do it pretty quickly because of course I don't want to add any moisture into the air because the condensation and everything. Eventually you will start to be able to see it kind of building up on the door over here. Now the reason it's down to 60 degrees is because I'm running this at a low setting. The fan is on like a medium low speed, and honestly it feels pretty comfortable. Now if I turn this down to that sweet spot zone like I talked about, right about there the flame is just lit. I can turn the fan up a little bit. That will be about the same. Now, how efficient is this thing? Last year when I was on the East Coast, I was able to run the heater just like this right here for a little over 2.5 weeks, so about 400 hours in total. I did leave it on while I was even driving, which I do not recommend. Kimbo does not recommend that either. It's dangerous, but with the way everything is built in here, it was just too cold to let everything freeze because we were living out of the camper at the time. So I was able to heat the Kimbo for 2.5 weeks straight with just this propane tank here, and it never ran completely out. I could tell it was getting a little bit low, and that's when I decided to go and get it filled. This thing is super efficient. You just have to kind of tweak it and figure out the sweet spot, adjust the flame setting and the fan setting depending on the temperature outside and inside. There's a giant ice cube in this soup right now. Oh, it is all still frozen solid. All right, this is gonna take a little while. Honestly, not too sure how this is going to work. Just gonna have to let this melt out of the can. This is how you know it's cold, when your soup looks like this. Yeah, soup. It is now 10 o'clock at night, and it is absolutely toasty in here. Almost a little bit too warm, if I'm being honest. Getting kind of tired. I was laying in bed for a little while there, and I had the heater blasting on high. As you saw, it's over 73 degrees in here, which is plenty warm for the night. For the record, I've been using AccuWeather to get the kind of like rough estimate of the temperature in the area. It's kind of hard when you're up in the mountains because you don't have an exact. But right now it says that it is -1 outside and a real feel with a little bit of wind at -7 degrees Fahrenheit. Now dinner was pretty good. I had 2 cans of soup and I poured some of the broth out of the soup back into the can and I put it outside. So that's going to be our little experiment right there. It's not quite frozen yet, but I can tell it is freezing. Look at that, we can see some lights in the distance. Now, like I mentioned, when you cook inside of the Kimbo, you do get a little bit of condensation, but for the most part in Colorado, it's very dry. So the condensation isn't too bad, except when it is extremely cold outside, which of course it is right now, and you have it cranking warm in here. So I had some people in some previous videos asking about like how it feels in here. Obviously the walls are all this like Alcantara, kind of like felty material. And the heat from the fireplace generally rises up into the bed area, so it's generally a lot warmer up here. Being that it is 73.4 degrees, it's warm basically everywhere in here. I would say it's like maybe 5 degrees cooler down towards the floor here. And the reason for that is because of mainly this door right here. Pretty much everything is this like soft felty material. It is really well insulated, but the door on this side obviously does not have anything. So you will see a little bit of condensation there kind of building up over time. It will mainly happen down towards this area here. You can tell it's a little bit wet, but it's not really an issue. And also the propane box. Obviously, this is insulated on the inside where the propane tank actually sits, but you can see some frost that actually can build up on the inside of this thing just because it's so warm in here and so cold out there. Now in my particular Kimbo, I of course have this box right here, which is made for an air conditioner, which I took out and put a secondary battery in its place. This is kind of like metal on metal to the outside too. So generally this gets pretty dang cold. But then you have that material down here, which keeps it pretty warm in here. And then you have these walls, which this one happens to be pretty warm just because it's close to the fireplace. This one right here, again, a little bit chillier just because of the conduction of the metal to the outside. But overall, this thing is super well insulated. I did turn the heat down to the low setting. I think I'm going to keep it on low tonight with the fan maybe like 3/4 of the way up because it is about to get a lot colder. -1 and a real feel of -7 right now is actually the warmest it is going to be for at least the next 24 hours. Tomorrow is when it's going to get really interesting because the temperature is going to drop overnight and then it is going to keep dropping all day tomorrow, and we won't see the weather warm back up again until maybe like late tomorrow night going into the next morning. So far I've seen a low of a possibility of -26 real feel, and I think it was -16. Sorry, 11 a.m. -6 real feel of -27 and snow. So that brings us to another one of the reasons why I parked where I did. I didn't want to camp anywhere too far away. One, I needed reception because I wanted to work while I was out here, but two, I wanted to have an easy way out of the mountains. One, if it snows, but two, if my truck doesn't start in the morning. Now, I've never really had an issue. I'm gonna knock on wood right now. Haven't really had an issue with the truck not starting in the past, but when it does get really cold, obviously it takes a toll on the batteries, and this is going to be a very cold night. So hopefully in the morning it is uneventful, but also it could get pretty interesting in the morning. So that is the 10 o'clock update. 35% humidity, 73 degrees in here. It's almost a little bit too warm to sleep, so Now that that's back down on low, hopefully it will cool down just a little bit more in here, and I'm gonna get some sleep. I will talk to you guys in the morning. Well, good morning. I woke up at around 7:30 and I slept great, but the reason I woke up is because I felt it getting a little bit colder. So 8 o'clock now, I hopped out of bed and we're at 32% humidity in here and 59.1 degrees. So it's definitely getting a little bit colder. I turned the heater up to high and still feeling pretty good in here now that I'm up and moving. That temperature outside though, -6 with a real feel of -29. An hour from now, a real feel of -34 degrees Fahrenheit. That is absolutely insane. So I'm going to pack my stuff up and hopefully get out of here before the snow hits. You can check out how the cold was spreading. Still got some ice here just because of the metal on metal contact. And the door as well, this is all frozen now instead of just being condensation. It's so cold that it's even kind of expanding out this metal here. Yeah, that is very cold, but still feels pretty good in here. Check out our little soup experiment. Yeah, they're frozen all right. It's kind of nice looking down into the valley, although that means there's snow coming. Pretty beautiful. Ooh. Anything metal that you touch right now is so bad to touch. All right, don't fail me now, truck. Oh yeah, no problem. So having my truck start was definitely the icing on the cake. The Kimbo kept me nice and warm, and now I'm able to drive down and get out of here. I bet if I would stick around and wait for this snow and that super frigid temp, the truck probably would have had a little bit of a harder time to start, but I am very thankful that everything worked out okay. Come on, defrost. So to recap, very cold all across the country, but the Kimbo does a really good job thanks to that propane fireplace in there. It's super efficient as long as you can figure out how to dial in the perfect temperature for your vehicle or whatever it's in, and it has not failed me yet. It's a little finicky to get it going, but once it's going, that thing will run for a very long time. Now the last little stretch of this storm is going to be probably the worst, so I'm heading home to hunker down and be warm. I'm gonna edit this video and actually going to work on a few more just before I leave for Mexico next week, which is going to be a great break in the weather. It's gonna be like 100 degrees down there, so very nice change of pace, and I'll still be connected a little bit on Instagram, so I'll be posting some stuff over there while we are on vacation. And I think that's all that I have for today. So if you guys have any questions on the self-contained propane fireplace or the Kimbo, anything that you saw here, let me know in the comments down below and I'll try to answer anything as best as possible. If you're new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every single week. As always, thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.